Hello, everyone. What's going on? This is the Noah Gillian Show, and I, of course, am your host, Noah Gillian. So happy you decided to join in today. It is the 4th of October, 2022, and on today's episode, we are going to be breaking down a big week 4 in the NFL, breaking down key storylines, answering some big questions that came from the weekend's action. And then we're going to be answering a mailbag question as well before finishing up with some Phillies talk as they end their decade-long postseason drought. Before we get started, though, please hit that subscribe button if you're joining us on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please hit that follow or that subscribe button. Really help this podcast grow. If you're looking for us on social media, you can find the show's account on Twitter at Noah Gillian Show, and you can find myself at Noah Gillian. If you're looking on Instagram, you can find myself at Noah Gill1, and you can find the show's account at The Noah Gillian Show. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, to start off today, the first big question we have coming out of week 4, of course, is going to start with the Philadelphia Eagles. The main question is, what, though, did we learn from the Eagles' win over the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 4? It was an absolute just slush fest at the Link. It was an unbelievable game. Jacksonville shot ahead 14-0. They had a pick 6. And then a quick turnover on downs for the Eagles led to another Jacksonville touchdown. And vibes were at an all-time low in the Gillian household. I'm just going to say that. We were just getting smacked around. The offense looked terrible. Defense couldn't get a stop. And Jacksonville looked how they've been looking all year. Explosive on offense. Looking very good in the running game. James Robinson was looking phenomenal. Their offensive line was looking very, very good. And even without Zay Jones on the outside for Jacksonville, the receivers were still getting open. Jamal Agnew, I believe, had a phenomenal game. Should have had 3 touchdowns, but ended the day with 2. And, looked great. Looked great for Jacksonville. But then the tide kind of turned there in the second quarter, toward the end of the first quarter, second quarter. Trevor Lawrence missed Jamal Agnew on a long touchdown throw that would have put them up 21-0, and then instead on the next snap he fumbles the football, recovered by the Eagles, and from there the Eagles just absolutely took off. They scored 20 unanswered points in the second quarter. The second quarter has looked like their main output. They've just been absolutely dominant in that quarter to start the year, finishing half strong, so that's a very, very good sign moving forward for the Eagles. But what did we learn? Let's get back to the main question there. What we learned is the Eagles have not lost their identity. I think that's the main takeaway from that game. You saw a lot of 2021 Eagles in this game. I mean, they rushed for over 200 yards on the ground, 210 to be exact, and they played opportunistic defense. They recovered 4 fumbles, and they also picked off Trevor Lawrence on James Bradbury, had a phenomenal interception in the red zone. Nonetheless, he's just been a phenomenal pickup by Howie Roseman and the Eagles, especially with Darius Slay missing a lot of time in this game. But Jacksonville was driving. They were in the red zone, and Trevor Lawrence almost threw a little Kirk Cousins off his back foot, a little floater over to Christian Kirk, and Kirk was just fading back, and Bradbury came out of nowhere and just grabbed that interception in front of him. That was a huge play for me in the game, because that's when Jacksonville, they took a punch, they fell down to the mat, but they got up and they started getting some momentum back, and Bradbury just totally snatched all hope away from Jacksonville there. So that was such a big play for me, and the defense was so opportunistic. But getting back to what I was saying with the 2021 Eagles, is it was just running game. It was physicality at the line of scrimmage, and it was just dominating. I mean, you look at it, Miles Sanders, Booby Miles, killing it. 27 carries, 134 yards, 2 tutties after having 0 last year. And then you talk about Jalen Hurts. Carried the ball 16 times for 38 yards and a score. He scored the first touchdown of the game on a 4th and goal. Great, strong run. Took a hit as he was going over the goal line. Was a huge play for the Birds. We needed a touchdown there, and they'd gone for it already on a 4th down and did not convert. And then they come around on this next one in the red zone, 4th and goal to go, and Hurts punches it in. Phenomenal effort from Jalen Hurts there. Then you also had a Kenny Gainwell sighting. He punched in a touchdown from about 10 yards out. He also had 5 carries for 19 yards. Trey Sermon also came out of nowhere. His first touch as an Eagle ripped off a 14-yard run. So I think what that shows you is everyone just was having a field day on the offense. They were all getting giant holes that they were able to run through. But the big takeaway here is Miles Sanders. He looks absolutely dominant. This was a game that Jacksonville knew the Eagles were going to run. Granted, they were still throwing the ball, Philadelphia was, but they knew Philadelphia was going to be running the football, and they couldn't stop it. The Eagles lost Jordan Mailata in the first quarter of this game on Jalen Hurts' pick 6. Mailata was going to tackle the ball carrier and ended up hurting his shoulder. I believe it was his left shoulder, stretching out to make a tackle. Nick Sirianni didn't sound too concerned. It sounded like he was going to have a really good chance to play this coming Sunday against Arizona. But it was almost like you didn't even notice Mailata was gone. There was a play that they ended up sacking Jalen Hurts on in the second half where defensive end for Jacksonville, Josh Allen, kind of ran over Jack Driscoll on the left tackle spot. And it was almost like that was the only blip on the radar. When they decided, you know what, let's run the ball, it was like it didn't even matter. Landon Dickerson has been playing at an all-pro level. Jason Kelsey has been playing at an all-pro level. Lane Johnson might be the best offensive lineman in all of football with how he's been playing. He hasn't allowed a sack since 2020. He hasn't allowed a quarterback hit since 2021. I mean, this guy is playing out of his mind, and it just starts up there. They just absolutely set the tone for everything that the Eagles want to do, and it makes Jalen Hurts' life so much easier when he has an offensive line and he has some time like that. Now, back to Jordan Mailata. His injury, while it doesn't seem too serious, it's definitely concerning. It's a big man's shoulder. He plays the offensive line. Now, the Eagles are 4-0. They do have a little bit of a lighter schedule. I mean, Arizona is a tough team, which they have coming up. But after that, kind of a lighter-ish schedule. So you don't have to rush him back if he's not fully healthy. I think you already determined with this Eagles team that you're a playoff team, you're a playoff contender, and you're a serious threat to make some noise in the playoffs when you get there. And Jordan Mailata is a big reason why. He's one of the best left tackles in the league, as is. I mean, I talked about 3 other guys playing at all-pro levels. He's playing at an all-pro level at the left tackle position as well. So you need to make sure he's healthy. Bottom line, Nick Sirianni didn't seem too concerned with the shoulder injury, so I'm not going to be super concerned about the shoulder injury. Then again, you play the offensive line. There's chances you're going to get banged up here and there throughout. So I thought it was a very, very great game for the Birds, coming out and just absolutely silencing all the noise. Jacksonville came in with a lot of momentum, and the defense stepped up phenomenally. They sacked Trevor Lawrence 4 times. Like I mentioned, they forced 4 fumbles and recovered all 4. They also picked Trevor Lawrence off one game. I mean, he was just absolutely in it in this game. And I'm going to get the stats up so we have exactly who made big plays here. But Hassan Reddick finally showed up in this game. Actually, he showed up against Washington in week 3, and it was, kind of the first time he's made a big presence in the Philadelphia Eagles uniform, and then just came out and had another great game. He had 2 sacks in this game. I believe he had 2 forced fumbles as well. And then you also had TJ Edwards had a sack as well. So it was very, very good. And then you also had guys like Jordan Davis had a great game, had a great tackle for loss, the first one of his career, really had a phenomenal, he started the game at nose tackle. They took him out after the play, but he played a lot. And he was just eating the center up, resetting the line of scrimmage multiple times. And what I mean by that, I think that's such an important point I did want to hit on with the Eagles defensive line, because it's such an advantage. When you can reset the line of scrimmage, it's like, yeah, you're starting on the 34-yard line, but after you call a hike and before you hand it off or before you hit the back step of a drop for a quarterback, where does the line kind of set up? Because if your defense can push, especially on running plays, if your defense can push the offensive line back a yard or 2, you're already putting them at a disadvantage. You're already acting like, okay, now you're really from the 32-yard line instead of the 34-yard line. This is why the Eagles' offensive line is so great, because they reset the line of scrimmage, pushing up the field, which is why their running game is so effective. And the combination of their defensive line resetting it in a negative aspect for the offense, and then the Eagles' offensive line gaining a positive impact on the offensive side of the ball, I think is just such a big factor for the success so far. And the defensive line is really starting to provide a lot of pressure. And just to kind of hit on one more thing that I mentioned after the Detroit game and after the Minnesota game, there wasn't a lot of pressure with four-man fronts. And they've totally alleviated my worries because they have gotten after the quarterback with four-man. When they blitz, they've been effective. But it really just comes down to Hassan Reddick showing out. Javon Hargrave has been playing great. Fletcher Cox has looked phenomenal this year. Brandon Graham is playing to a typical Brandon Graham type of game, and they're just looking great right now. I mean, I have nothing bad to say right now about the Philadelphia Eagles. They're 4-0. They're just they're winning all kinds of different ways, whether they're running the ball and taking the ball away. They're winning shootouts against Detroit in week 1. Week 3, they're just punching, their defense steps up and gets 9 sacks, turns the ball over. This game, it's running game, defense. Week 2, it was the defense. The defense has been really carrying them the last couple weeks, but that's not to say the offense hasn't been playing well as well, because Jalen Hurts just won NFC Offensive Player of the Month for September. So you almost kind of forget how good the offense is playing after the defense. So great game. I just kind of rambled way too long on that, what I meant to say, but what did the Eagles prove with the win over the Jaguars? They can win multiple different ways, all kinds of different weather. Jalen Hurts said it best: rain, sleet, or snow, the Eagles train will go. And that is a bar, my word. All right, next question we have here is, did Buffalo win their game versus Baltimore, or did Baltimore lose the game versus Buffalo? And you may be thinking, isn't that the same thing? But I think in sports in general, there is a certain thing as a team losing a game and the other team, almost getting gifted a win. And then there's a team that they're going to go out and they're winning the game. No matter what happens on the other side of the ball, they just do things that they're going to win no matter what. And it's really, really interesting with this game because I've been such a big fan of Baltimore coming into the year. I thought they were really going to bounce back. They're going to win this division. Lamar is just going to play at an MVP type level. And so far he has. But it's so weird. They have 2 games this year where they've led by at least 17 points. And they've lost both of those games. Both of those at home, nonetheless. It just is mind-boggling for me for a team that, it's just so weird, because I got some statistics here that I did want to bring up because it's such an interesting team. I mean, we talk about passing yards per pass attempt, or we have team yards per pass attempt. So what we have there is however many yards you get per pass attempt, however you get them on, right? Baltimore is 7th in that category. So they are throwing the ball down the field. Like, they're throwing the ball 7.6 yards per pass attempt. But when we look at passing yards per play, they're 21st in the league with 217. So they are pushing the ball down the field, but they're not really capitalizing quite yet. Then we go to the next stat. Let's talk about some defense with Baltimore. Number 1 in the league, tied with Philadelphia in takeaways per game. Defense is being very opportunistic, very good, taking the ball away. But then, what do we know? Baltimore, 30th in the league in opponents' yards per game. They're giving up 425 yards per game. Absolutely unbelievable. And it's really crazy because they're giving up more yards at home than they are away from home. And it's so weird to think about all these contrasting, statistics. Like, they're pushing the ball down the field, but they're not really getting a lot of yards per play. They're taking the ball away a lot, which means their secondary is being opportunistic, but they're giving up a lot of yards for the opponents. And it's such an interesting, it's so interesting because they're 4th in the league in yards per play. This is a great stat. You see a lot of the teams in terms of offense, what really determines offense. Detroit, number 1. They have one of the best offenses in the league, might be number 1. Miami, great offense, number 2. Seattle has been playing phenomenal. Their offenses look great, number 3. Then you have Baltimore, Philadelphia, Buffalo, Kansas City, all in a row right there. These are the better offenses in the league. It's a great statistic to reference. And Baltimore's number 4 in that, category. They're still running the ball phenomenally, 8th in terms of total yards per game. And then we're going to flip to, yards per rush attempt. Where's Baltimore at? Where we got here? Baltimore. Number 3 in the NFL in yards per rush attempt. So they're still running the ball great. They're throwing the ball down the field. They're taking the ball away. But they're giving up 425 yards a game, and they're only throwing for 215 yards a game. They're still running the ball great. But, what is going on? I mean, they've had these big leads, and it almost seems like they take their foot off the pedal. Like, I don't understand what you saw. Mark Andrews kind of got a little snippy with a reporter asking, like, Lamar said they want to stay aggressive, and he's like, yeah, I agree with Lamar. We need to stay aggressive with everything, and almost like backhanded, like, listen, we need to stay aggressive to John Harbaugh, which, granted, there's been a lot of talk about that fourth down play they made. Late in the game, they had a 4th and goal, and they decided to throw the ball instead of take the 3 points and go for the touchdown. They don't get it. Buffalo comes right down the field, kicks a field goal, they win the game. And I don't have any problem with the decision to go for it. You put the ball, I was watching Monday Night Countdown last night, Alex Smith, you put the ball in the hands of your best player and you live with the results. And Lamar Jackson might be the best player in the NFL right now. That's how good he has been playing. So you got to put the ball in his hands and let him go. And here's the thing, you kick the field goal, then you run the kickoff play, they get it at the 25. Buffalo is like 40 yards away from field goal range with Josh Allen and like a minute left. Like, what's to say they don't just drive right down the field and maybe scream and score a touchdown? Then you're thinking, well, we were on the 3-yard line. We should have just went for the touchdown and just went for the touchdown, because then we wouldn't have put it in their hands. We're putting the ball in our hands. Then they have to go down and score a touchdown. They can't just settle for the 3. So overall, I'm not really worried about Baltimore. I know there's some concerning stats that I mentioned. Their team defense is 30th in the league. They're not really throwing the ball with much volume down the field, but like they're still 4th in the league in least amount of penalties per game. They're still very well coached with John Harbaugh. There's just a lot to like. Lamar Jackson, phenomenal. J.K. Dobbins finally getting healthy for that team. I think that they're really starting to perform, and they should be 4-0. They had 17-point leads against what a lot of people think are 2 of the best teams in the AFC. So they should realistically be 4-0 here, and that's not like a stretch. They had 17-point leads in the second halves of these games, and they blew them. So, I think it's a little bit of taking your foot off the pedal. It's a little bit of understanding your opponent. Like, Buffalo's on the other side, and you have a 17-point lead. You need to continue to be aggressive. Miami's on the other side with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. You need to continue to be aggressive. So I think that it's an easy fix for them. I think it's really, really, it's self-correctable for them. And I think that overall, Baltimore lost that game as opposed to Buffalo winning that game. All right, third topic we're going to talk on here, third question we have here is a little self-evaluation. Was I wrong about the Denver Broncos? And now I don't like to usually admit when I'm wrong too often, but I think it's really, really important, especially now that I'm doing this podcast, now I'm recording a lot of my takes. I think it's really important to hold yourself accountable when you're talking about sports like this a lot. I had Denver coming in Super Bowl champions. I had them winning the Super Bowl coming into this year. I thought they had a phenomenal defense. I thought they had amazing weapons. I thought they had a great offensive line. All they needed was a good quarterback under center. I thought this was a Tampa Bay scenario. Tom Brady got inserted into Tampa Bay. Boom. They got a Super Bowl winning quarterback. They have a great roster around them. Boom. They're going to the Super Bowl. What I failed to account for was Nathaniel Hackett. And a first-time head coach. When we look at the Tampa Bay scenario, Bruce Arians. I don't have to say much about Bruce Arians. Established head coach in this league. Byron Leftwich as their offensive coordinator. Established presence as an offensive coordinator in that league. Bruce Arians is one of the best offensive minds in league history too. So now we're going to the Denver situation. Nathaniel Hackett, former coordinator for Green Bay, now first-time head coach. I didn't put as much stock into that as a first-time head coach as I should have, honestly, because we're seeing he's the play caller. So the plays are coming, from his play sheet. And yeah, they have Russell Wilson, and, you can bang on Russell Wilson all you want, but he's still playing pretty well. Within the environment of what he's got, he's still playing pretty well and not playing great by any means, but I think Nathaniel Hackett is struggling so much. Let's just look at some things that are coaching, right? We'll pull up penalties per game. Denver, dead last in penalties per game at 9.3. Almost a full penalty worse than the 31st team on the rankings. So absolutely atrocious. Last year, let's look at who was in the penalties. Denver last year was the 6th best team in terms of penalties per game. They had the 6th least amount of penalties per game last year. Now this season, they're worse. They're literally the worst in the league. And it's really, really tough to see. I mean, they're 16th in terms of yards per play. In terms, and the thing is, what's saving them is their defense. Their defense is playing phenomenal. They're not taking the ball away at a phenomenal rate. They're tied for 21st in the league in takeaways per game, but like they're 4th in the league in total yards given up per game. So they're not letting teams sustain drives. So while they might not be taking the ball away, they're turning teams over on downs as opposed to getting takeaways. So their defense is playing phenomenal. Patrick Surtain might be one of the best cornerbacks in the league already in year 2. They have a great defensive line with Bradley Chubb, great linebackers, great secondary, like I mentioned, and they are holding teams to I'm just going to let me pull up points per game. I don't think I have that tab up, points per game. Wait, no, you know what I want? Hold on. This is not great, podcasting here. I should have had this tab up already, but opponents' points per game. I haven't even checked this statistic, but I'm just going to it because I know they're good. Tied for 5th. They are 5th best in terms of opponents' points per game in the league, giving up 17 points per game. If you're giving up 17 points per game, you should be winning all your games. They should, granted, Las Vegas, they just lost to Las Vegas 32-23 on Sunday. Las Vegas was 0-3 at home, desperate. I could see that's a spot where Las Vegas played way over expectation there, but they should have won week 1 against Seattle, so they should be sitting at 3-1 right now. And they're not. They're 2-2, which is still not bad. But in your division with Kansas City, you're going to need to keep up. You can't just give away games like that. So I think it's really, really. So back to the question: was I wrong about the Broncos? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say I was wrong, mainly because of nothing roster related, but mainly because of Nathaniel Hackett. Is he a head coach in this league? I don't know. I don't know if Nathaniel Hackett is a good head coach in this league. I do think that their offense is going to get a lot better as the year goes on. I do think that's going to be a trend that continues to improve. Now, the only problem is superstar running back Javonte Williams tears his ACL, his LCL, is going to be out for the year. Just a total crushing loss for Denver. I mean, he is one of the most elusive second-year running back. I love watching him play. He's a great running back, but major knee injury. So now they're going to rely on Melvin Gordon and Mike Boone as their 2 running backs. I think that's going to be a big issue for them. Not being able to run the ball is something that Russell Wilson is probably going to struggle with a little bit. He's going to have to put a lot more on his shoulders. Now, Melvin Gordon, the reason they brought him back was to have a good backup behind Javonte. But Melvin fumbled in this game. He's fumbled most of his career. It's been an issue for him. Mike Boone was dropping numerous passes in the 4th quarter when they were trying to come back. So I see this getting a little bit worse in the short term. I do see it getting better just because I believe in the personnel of Russell Wilson and their wide receivers, their offensive line, and their defense. But overall, I may have been wrong about Denver in this scenario. All right, question number 4 we have here now is Green Bay sneaking up on people? A lot of people, much like last year, wanted to pile on Green Bay after they just got eviscerated in week 1. They got absolutely blown out by Minnesota this year. But here Green Bay sits at 3-1, tied for the lead in their division after a 27-24 win over New England. To answer the question, is Green Bay sneaking up on people? I think mainly that's because of the record at 3-1. But no. I think their performance on the field has dictated where they kind of sit in the rank. I mean, they're going to be there. They are not playing well, and they're still 3-1, but they also haven't really been playing the best schedule, which is great. You get Chicago on Sunday night. Justin Fields just set the record for the lowest total passing prop ever. He literally, if people don't bet, people don't know, Vegas set passing props over-unders for quarterbacks. And his number was the lowest anybody's ever set. It was like 150 yards over under. That is ridiculous. So they beat Chicago. New England is starting Brian Hoyer, their backup quarterback. He gets hit with a concussion, I believe, and they bring in their 3rd-string rookie quarterback, and they still go to overtime against New England. They get blown out by Minnesota, and then they play a team in Tampa Bay without Mike Evans, without Chris Godwin, without Julio Jones, and granted, they beat them. Their defense was still healthy. Defense is still one of the best defenses in the league in Tampa Bay, so I give them credit for that win. But Minnesota's still 3-1. I mean, after they got blown out by the Eagles on Monday Night Football, I feel like a lot of people kind of were like, "Whoa, Minnesota might not be ready this year." But granted, they've came back and they bounced back with big wins over Detroit, with a big comeback win over Detroit, and then they snuck by the skin of their teeth against New Orleans in the London game this week. Will Lutz with a double doink for New Orleans gave Minnesota the win. So they're a lucky 3-1 right now. So I don't really want to count them, too far out, or give them the division right away. But I think Green Bay honestly is going to come back and win this division because they have Aaron Rodgers, they have Matt LaFleur. I think the rookie wide receivers are going to be playing a lot better towards the end of the season. I think their wide receiving core is going to get healthy. But you look at some of the statistics here, Green Bay 7th in the league in rushing yards per game. Great. Number 9 in yards per rush attempt. Great. In terms of yards per play, 10th in yards per play. Great. Now, where they're struggling is passing. They're still pushing the ball down the field. They're 12th in terms of yards per pass attempt, so more towards the middle of the pack than you would like, but still right there. They're middle of the pack in terms of passing yards per game, so you don't love to see that. But, their defense is playing pretty well in terms of yards per game. Let's see where they're at here. They're at 5th in terms of opponent yards per game, so their defense is playing very, very well. They're only giving up 17.3 points per game as a defense, so they're 7th in the league in there. So their defense is playing really, really well. They're also 4th in terms of penalties per game, so tied with Baltimore in terms of 4th fewest penalties per game. So what's that telling me? Their defense is playing very well. Their running game is playing very well. Their coaching is still very good. And the only thing that there is a weakness of is their passing game. And who do they have at quarterback? Aaron Rodgers, a first ballot Hall of Famer. So I tend to think that they're going to figure that out, but I'm nervous if they get behind in a big game. If they get behind, are they going to be able to come back and take over a team? I'm going to say yes, they're sneaking up on people. I'm changing my answer. I think yes, they're going to sneak up on people. After looking at some of these stats, after talking it through, what they mean, they're pushing the ball down the field when they're throwing it, so they're still taking those chances, much like Baltimore. These teams are actually really, really similar the more I'm looking at these statistics in terms of penalties, rushing. The only thing that's different is Green Bay's defense in terms of yard suppression is a lot better, and Baltimore's defense in terms of takeaway is much better. So I think that's the only difference there, but they're really similar teams. They're going to play, they're going to run the ball. They're not going to throw it that often. They're going to be very well coached, and they're going to do well. The only thing that's different is Green Bay's defense is a lot more stout in terms of just suppression of yards. So I do think Green Bay may be sneaking up on some people in terms of they don't think they're Super Bowl contenders, but it is going to be worrisome. I'm really, really interested to see how these rookie wide receivers acclimate themselves as the season goes on. But we all know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do, and we'll see how they kind of continue throughout the rest of the season. All right, we are now moving on to our next segment, the mailbag portion of the show. This week we had a question come in from Jimmy in Upper Township, and Jimmy was wondering about the Jacksonville running back scenario. So this is going to be a little bit more fantasy related, but also in terms of general NFL outlook. I've been really high on Jacksonville so far this year. So he was asking, has James Robinson made himself the clear-cut number 1 running back in Jacksonville ahead of Travis Etienne? Now, a little background here. Travis Etienne was selected with, I believe, either the 31st or the 32nd, the 30th, one of the last couple picks of the first round of the NFL draft 2 seasons ago. Trevor Lawrence went number 1 2 years ago. Travis Etienne, his running back from Clemson, his teammate, went about 30, 31st, 32nd. I'm not exactly sure there, but he was a first round pick. So this was, granted, a year after, or this was a year after James Robinson's breakout year. So this was not this season, not last season. So 3 seasons ago, 2 seasons ago, James Robinson had a phenomenal year. Over 1,000 yards, multiple touchdowns, got all the work in Jacksonville, undrafted, and was great. And then they go out the next year, they draft a first round running back. So a lot of people are like, oh, do they like James Robinson that much? And what does Travis Etienne do? Breaks his foot in training camp, out the whole year. So James Robinson used heavily again, but then again, we're throwing everything out from last year in Jacksonville with the Urban Meyer scenario. So we come into this season, and now Travis Etienne gaining a lot of buzz in camp. James Robinson, I forgot last year, tore his Achilles early in the year. So was out for most of the year. A lot of people didn't think he was going to be ready for training camp this year. Turns out he was. He looked really, really good and came into the year as probably the starting running back. So let's talk about some numbers this year. In terms of total carries, James Robinson has 59 this year. Travis Etienne, only 34. We're talking about in terms of total targets this year. Etienne has 11. James Robinson has 8. So this is through week 4 as well. So I got this question from Jimmy midweek, and I wanted to watch this week and see how it kind of went because there were some positive trends for Etienne going through week 3. So I wanted to see how that kind of played out. And I think that the main takeaway here is it's very game script for me, at least. I mean, looking at a lot of these numbers, week 2 against Indianapolis, they blew out Indianapolis. It was 24-0. James Robinson had 23 carries. And I think that is a big product of they were up by so much. I mean, Etienne had 9 carries as well, so got the ball a decent amount. And just kind of looking at the trends, week 1, it was they went up and then they went down early to Washington, then they came back and took the lead, and then they ended up losing. So it was pretty even in terms of there. Etienne also dropped 2 touchdowns in that game. He had one that went right through his hands, and then he had another wide open that Trevor Lawrence just missed him. So you're talking about there could have been a very different narrative coming out of week 1, but James Robinson had 11 carries in week 1. Etienne only had 4. Meanwhile, Etienne was targeted 4 times in the passing game for 2 receptions. J-Rob only had 2 targets for 1 reception. So looked very, promising. Etienne was used in the passing game. J-Rob was used on the ground. The next week, they blow the Colts out. Like I mentioned, 23 carries for James Robinson, 9 carries for Etienne. Etienne had 3 targets in this game, caught all 3. James Robinson had 2 targets, caught both of them. The next week, this was against the Chargers when they went in there and they blew out the Chargers. James Robinson had 17 carries. Meanwhile, Travis Etienne had 13 carries. So starting to see the shift a little bit, and they both had 3 targets and 3 catches. So really, really interesting. Then we go into week 4, slush bowl. You expect a lot of rushing. They go up big. Jacksonville does. And James Robinson has 8 carries. Etienne also had 8 carries. They both had 1 target, failed to catch either one of them. So this was a sense of, and I did want to kind of mention in weeks 1 and week 4, week 1 they had 18 total team attempts. And in week 4, they had 19 total team attempts. So between the two, it is a 2-headed backfield. I just want to point that out. It is a 2-headed backfield. Trevor Lawrence gets a couple carries a game. They'll give some to Jamal Agnew here and there. But mostly it is these guys. I mean, you talk about it. 15 of 18 between these two in week 1. 32 of 37 in week 2. You have 30 of 36 in week 3. And then you have 16 of 19 in week 4. And that is combined carries between the two. Over total team attempts. So what is kind of breaking down for me here is I don't think that James Robinson has this job locked up. Like, it is his job. He's getting all the work. What I see here is in a positive game script for Jacksonville. And what I mean by positive game script is in a game where they're winning. I think James Robinson is going to get a lot of carries. I think he's going to get a lot of the first and second down work. But in games that they are losing in a negative game script, I could see Etienne getting a lot more work. But the thing is, like, if James Robinson wasn't there for Etienne, I think they would still bring in another running back to be a thumper on early downs. Like, I don't really know if he is a 3-down back. He's explosive. I mean, in some of these games, he's ripped off 20-yard runs. He looked pretty good against Philly. He wasn't really getting, like, every single carry, he wasn't getting like 4 or 5 yards. He was getting kind of stuffed behind the line of scrimmage a couple times, but he ripped off a couple 10-yard runs in this game, or maybe not a couple, but he ripped a decent amount of chunk plays off. So still explosive, still good. I mean, James Robinson has been getting some targets this year, but I think that's also just Trevor Lawrence taking checkdowns when James Robinson's on the field. And let's not act like James Robinson has been ripping off big runs. Like, I think that also plays into it a little bit. But overall, getting back to the question a little bit, just to answer that, is James Robinson the clear-cut number 1 in Jacksonville? I think it depends on how you look at it. If you're thinking about number one as the running back who's going to take the first snap, who's going to get the first carry, or excuse me, who's going to take the first snap, then yeah, he is going to be on the field on first down. But if they get down, if they're in the hurry up, if they're in the 2-minute offense, it's going to be ETN. And I think that is still valuable because I do see Jacksonville as an ascending offense. They got a nice little schedule coming up here. Houston, they have New York coming up. So I think they still have some games where both these guys can get going. But then again, I don't think either one of these guys is necessarily just going to take the reins and go. And I think for fantasy owners, you would love for that to happen. I traded for Travis Etienne in one league that I play in. I traded Breece Hall for him, so please hold the laughter for me. But I'm hoping that Travis Etienne gets a lot more carries, but I don't really see him taking enough away from James Robinson where he's just going to be this uber efficient, ultra targeted, ultra carry guy where he's just going to be the guy. So I don't really necessarily think that is the case. But if you're thinking about, is the guy going to get the first snap? Is he going to be the running back on the first snap? Then yeah, I think if that's your definition of RB1, then yeah. But in terms of if we're talking fantasy, I think it really just depends on the game script for these guys and how that kind of shakes out is going to determine the usage for both of these running backs. All right, guys, to finish off the show today, we're going to switch to our B block, which is going to be talking about the Philadelphia Phillies and their ending of the postseason drought. We made it, guys. We made it. We are back. We're talking about the Fightins, guys. We are talking about the Fightins. We are back in the postseason. They didn't think we could do it. They did not think we would be back in this position. Hell, I didn't think we'd be back in this position. But we are in the postseason, baby. We are coming for the Cardinals. We got Zach Wheeler lined up game 1. We got Aaron Nola lined up in game 2. Coming for the Cardinals. I mean, woo! We are ready to go. I mean, I got so emotional last night sitting in my living room. I almost cried watching this team record the final out. I was hoping my fiance didn't come and walk out and catch me because I was standing in front of the TV on the brink of tears listening to Reese Hoskins talking about this. Like, oh my God, just think, watching this game last night, I sit down, I'm ready to go, 8 p.m. first pitch in Houston. Houston, number 1 seed in the American League, looking great. What Dusty Baker comes out the week before says, we are not resting our regulars. We are pitching our starters. We're putting our heavy hitters in the lineup. Good. Give them to us. First pitch of the game, Schwarber, tank opposite field. That is how you set the tone. First pitch of the game. You have it. Listen, this is the first game that the Phils could clinch. They could have lost this game, gone to tomorrow night, and won that game and clinched. The first game that you can clinch. Kyle Schwarber, the guy you go out and you spend a ton of money on, postseason experience, home run hitter, leadoff hitter. First pitch of the game. Tank. Absolute tank. Sets the tone. Like, that is how you set the tone for a game. I mean, he absolutely cranked that. And you know what it did? Just took the weight off everybody's shoulders. There was so much pressure on Aaron Nola coming into this game. All his September demons, all his demons he's been battling. He can't pitch in September. He's not a big game pitcher. He's not pressure just off his shoulders. And he came out and absolutely shoved 6 2/3 perfect innings. Perfect innings. And oh my God. And then gave up 2. I mean, Yordan Alvarez, with 2 outs in the 6th inning, jumped on him, first pitch fastball, ripped a single. What am I going to say? It's Yordan Alvarez. And then they got another single. They took Nola out the game. Alvarado comes in, finishes that inning, shoves in the 8th. And then they bring Zach Eflin in to close the game and get the saves. 2 of the longest tenured Phillies, and Aaron Nola and Zach Eflin come in to get the win and the save in this game. But let me go back to Aaron Nola because holy moly. I mean, he had his best stuff that I may have ever seen Aaron Nola had. He had 9 Ks, 6 2/3 innings, 2 hits, absolutely dealt against a lineup that had Jose Altuve in it, Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker, Yuli Gurriel, Jeremy Pena, who was in the running for AL Rookie of the Year, if not for Adley Rutschman and Julio Rodriguez. So, this was and they played at least 6 innings. I think Altuve came out when he was going to come up his 3rd time, and Bregman was out. But Yordan stayed in the game. Kyle Tucker stayed in the game. So It was just like he absolutely shut everybody up last night, and it was so great to see. If you get that Aaron Nola in the playoffs, and you get the Zach Wheeler, which we saw a couple days ago, we're talking about the fightins here, all right? So now you look at it. You got Kyle Schwarber, 2 dingers last night. I mean, what? Bryson Stott hits a big-time home run. He kind of cooled off in the end of August, the beginning of September, but he has absolutely turned it on of late. Extra base hits going the other way, hitting home runs. And then Kyle Schwarber looks like June Kyle Schwarber again. He's hitting home run after home run. I mean, he has multi-home run games, back-to-back days to get us into the playoffs. I mean, oh my God. Guys, I mean, I don't know if you can see, I'm tearing up. And I'm just thinking about these guys. I'm looking at Bryce in the locker room. I'm looking at JT. I'm looking at Gene Segura. I mean, I take Bryce out of it. I'm looking at JT. I'm looking at Gene. I'm looking at Nola. I'm looking at Wheeler. I'm looking at all these guys. Eflin. I'm looking at, oh my God, these guys who have never played in the postseason before, clinching that spot. Who cares if we're the wild card? I mean, we're that meme where the guys celebrating, popping bottles, kissing models, and we're third on the podium behind the Mets and the Braves. I don't care. We are in the dance, and that's all that matters. Like Rob Thompson said last night, 13 more wins, and we are world champions. 17 other teams in the league can't say that they're still alive. But you know who can? The Philadelphia Phillies. Yeah, we can. We are in the offs. And it made it so much sweeter, guys. It made it so much sweeter that Aaron Nola came out and he shoved. Kyle Schwarber came out hitting nukes. And, oh my God, the defense, phenomenal. Bryson Stott makes a great diving play. I mean, the defense was there all night. Brandon Marsh makes a great running catch for the last out. I mean, guys, I am amped up for this Philly. I mean, we can preview it a little bit now. I mean, it's just like we got Zach Wheeler game 1. You got Aaron Nola probably pitching in game 2. Game 3, if necessary, is probably going to be Ranger Suarez, who's been shoving of late. So it's just like it's set up. This is exactly how you envisioned it. If you're a Phillies front office member, if you're a Phillies fan, this is exactly how you pictured it. Get us to the dance, and we got 2 of the best pitchers in the National League and a lineup that is peaking at the right time. You got Schwarber peaking at the right time. You got Bryce struggling, but still having really good at-bats. I think in the postseason, once that adrenaline starts pumping, oh man, he is going to start getting going. You got JT, probably been our best hitter all year, going 2020 as a catcher. Hitting another dinger on Sunday night through the rain in Washington. Looking great. Catching every single day. And looking phenomenal. You got those guys playing well. Bohm still looking good. Stott starting to heat up. Gene hasn't been playing great, but has been playing great defense. And Brandon Marsh on a 5-game hitting streak to end the year. It's like, I am so amped up for it. We haven't had Phillies baseball in the playoffs since 2011. And if you recall, it was against those goddamn St. Louis Cardinals. And the last at-bat of the game, Ryan Howard blows out his Achilles on that grounder. It's time for some revenge, guys. It is time for some revenge. You can bet your life we will be talking about every single Phillies game after each game. We're going to have a preview on Saturday. After the first game is on Friday, so we're going to have a preview on Saturday, or we're going to have a game reaction on Saturday. We're going to have a game reaction after the game on Saturday, on Sunday, and oh my God. And the thing is, it's going to be over after 2 games because Wheeler is going to go in there and he's going to shove and he's going to win that game. Nola is going to go in there game 2 and he is going to shove and they're going to win game 2. The only thing I'm nervous about is the machine. Albert Pujols has been raking of late. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but he just hit 7 home runs the other day. He's up to 703. He is absolutely raking. They got Arenado. They got Paul Goldschmidt. They have some beasts in that lineup. But you know what? The Phils have great pitching. The bullpen has been great for the Phils. Alvarado has been one of the best relievers in the game. They've been saving Sir Anthony and David Robertson. They haven't had to pitch much recently, so you should have 2 of your best relievers fresh, ready to go. There's rumors that Brad Hand is going to be coming off the IL and should be healthy for the playoffs. So you got your bullpen getting healthy, pitching well, all at the same time. You got your lineup starting to gel. You got your starters starting to gel. Woo! We are back, baby. All right, everybody. Gotta bring it down a little bit. That is going to do it for the show today, though. Once again, please check that description below for all our social media handles. Please go and follow us there. Again, if you have any questions, mailbag questions, we're always open. If you got my number, hit me with the text. If you want to put it on the comments down on YouTube, hit us with the comment down below. Let us know. Hit us on social media if you got a question. We will answer it on the show. So definitely check that out. Thank you guys again for tuning in, and we can't wait to see you guys again next time.